Hello, I'm the Pink Phantom, and this is my podcast. Join me as I delve into the world of games and gaming, and especially old school RPGs. Together, let's voyage into the astral realm and check out my Phantom Thoughts. In this episode, Daniel from the Bandits Keep podcast and Media Empire calls in responding to my discussion about gold for XP and why not just do the XP straight. And then I have a series of responses from Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, Joe from the Hindsightless podcast, Barry from Shadows. It used to be Shadows of the GM podcast. Now it's the A Song of Dice and Shadows podcast, and Riley from the Diegetic Advancement podcast. Thank you all for calling in. They're calling in about dice fudging and what exactly does it mean and what are their opinions about it, and what about related opportunities for the GM to kind of manipulate the challenge of an adventure or a campaign as it's ongoing or even over time. Where does that fit in? So thank you all for calling in, and as usual, you can find links to all their podcasts and assorted connected things on the internet in the show notes. And then we finish up with more from my solo AD&D campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers.
Hey, Pink Phantom, Daniel calling in from listening to your latest, well, actually it's not the latest now because I saw another one pop up, episode where EOTB calls in with lots of great calls, and I had some calls in the beginning. So I just want to address a couple of it. I thought it was really good information. I want to talk a little bit about the gold for XP because I think you make a really good point about, well, why not just say it's worth 2,000 XP versus giving an arbitrary, it's worth, they're going to get 2,000 gold pieces. And to kind of play devil's advocate, the reason why I don't suggest new DMs to the OSR do that is that I like to recommend people try to play the games as written at first. Because part of my experience with getting into the OSR, or the reason why, and I've said this before, is because I had got back into playing 5e, and a lot of that culture kind of made fun of old games and kind of implied they didn't work and things were weird and that things were messed up and that none of the rules made sense and stuff like that. Like, there was a lot of bashing in those groups that I first got into. And I remembered playing all those games as a kid and thinking to myself, well, that's not accurate. We didn't do that. I feel like maybe we were just dumb. Maybe we were kids and it is like that. So when I started playing and realized they were wrong and people just didn't understand the rules, or they were like dropping certain rules and using other rules to justify how something didn't work. At that point, I said to myself, well, when you're first getting into a game like this, you've got to take the game as a whole. Once you understand it, then you can make changes. So for me to say to somebody, look, you need your higher level characters to advance. So what ends up happening, and this actually happens naturally, monsters that are generally tougher generally have treasure types that have a lot more gems and jewelry. So what you can do is when you go into dungeons, it becomes feasible to level up, right? It's just part of the game mechanics. So I think if you want to play a game where you don't want the player characters to have a lot of gold, for whatever reason, because I know a lot of GMs have a problem with that, or seem to when they talk online, then the simple solution is to have gems and jewelry and just have no way to sell it, or art objects, right? How valuable is the Mona Lisa, after an apocalypse, right? You could still give the value for the Mona Lisa because they've got this beautiful art object they can hang on their wall, but nobody's buying it. And if they do, they're going to buy it for a fraction of its value. So you can put this $2,000 tapestry in your dungeon, but if the player characters are broken, they really need to sell it, they might only get a handful of gold pieces, maybe a couple hundred gold pieces for it, even though they got the XP value for the whole thing. So that's why I recommend doing that versus just saying, well, to recover the tapestry is this many XP, right? I just think that for me, that helps keep that line going. Now, of course, once you're experienced in stuff, you are 100% right. And of course, why not just give XP for stuff? Why does it matter that it's gold? Who cares, right? And I think that's a very good point. In fact, I'm working on, maybe in the next couple of podcasts, I'll start talking about it a little bit, but I've been making notes and stuff. In my game, I'm trying to decide a way to make it so that when characters level up, XP or the ways you get XP expand. Or, I mean, they might always be available, but they're probably not available to lower level characters simply because of their power level. That is to say that, like OD&D, you'll get a decent amount of experience points for fighting, unlike AD&D and BX, and you'll get experience points for gold. But then maybe in mid levels, you get it from more questing, right? Maybe you get it from magic items and quests more. And then at domain levels, you get it for other things, right? Like the wealth of the nation, warring, making peace, right? That kind of stuff. So basically, the types of XP available to you will shift and change. Now, if you're a second level character and somehow you broker a peace treaty between two countries, which is normally a domain level thing, you would still get experience points for that, obviously. So maybe I shouldn't say it opens up. It's just that, again, it maybe becomes more available. I think that falls closer into, and it kind of ties into something that you said about where you're talking about the adversarial stuff and you were talking about the DMG and the werewolves, the idea that like, I'm playing with my group and we're playing this game and this is what's coming from it. I'm learning as the more I play with multiple groups I play with that in mid to high levels, players don't want to dungeon delve, at least the people I play with. I mean, I'm sure there's groups that love to dungeon delve at 9th level. That's just not something that my players really like to do. I mean, they will occasionally dive into a dungeon for a reason, but they don't want to spend every session fighting big monsters in a dungeon. They would much rather handle political threats and those kind of things. So because of that, I'm adjusting my XP. So I think it's interesting, right? I agree with you 100%, but I was just kind of devil's advocate, the reason why you might want to stick with the rules, especially when you're first starting. Anyways, great episode. Lots of great stuff. I mean, I'm not going to comment on all of it because you mostly did. Lots and lots of great info there. It's interesting to, I think it's DCC that specifically points out, like, I think this is literally a line that says, the rules for the monsters or the monsters don't follow the same rules as the players. And I think AD&D has a bit of that vibe too. So based on what EOTB was saying. Anyways, great episode as always. And I'm about to listen to your next one and I'll call in again.
Well, thank you, Daniel. A lot of good ideas and feedback there. Yes, AD&D does have that vibe about monsters playing for different rules because it is said in the DMG, and I can't remember the exact location, but that the doors in dungeons are not stuck for the monsters. The players have to fight to get through the doors, but the monsters don't. They can just go through the doors. It works for them. And I think that goes back to, again, to OD&D as well, because there is no infravision. I believe this is correct. You know OD&D better than I do, but I believe it's correct that player character types, even the demi-humans, don't have infravision, so they all need torches to see in the dungeon, but monsters all can see fine in the dungeon. So that's always interesting to see how that works out. And I like that idea about different ways of earning XP, unlocking sort of for PCs. And I think you could even use something like that as sort of a more objective way of doing of enforcing player character roles instead of doing the grading system that AD&D does that Jason has talked about on the Nerds RPG Variety Cast recently, where character class earns XP for doing what that character class should do. So the magic user earns XP for casting spells. The thief earns XP for doing thiefy things. The fighter earns XP for jumping into combat, things like that. So there are XP awards available to those classes for doing the class emphasis that other classes wouldn't have for doing the exact same thing. But again, that's a lot of good stuff you put in there. It's always good to hear from you, and thank you for the call.
Hey, Jason here, calling about fudging dice. So let me preface this by saying, and I've said this many times in call-ins and on my own show, that as long as you and your table are having fun, you're doing it the right way. And I do feel that way. But for me personally, fudging the dice is cheating. Full stop. And whether I'm the GM, who I'm going to roll in the open if I'm the GM and let people see what the roles are, or if I'm the player and find out the GM's fudging, I think I'm being cheated. when that's happening. In your example, well, we have this long combat. The players are going to win anyway. I'm going to fudge the numbers to get it over faster. Yes, that's fudging the dice, and that's cheating. Now, if the GM stops the game and says, hey, guys, this is going to take us another hour to play out, but you're obviously going to win. Are you okay with fast-tracking through this? I'm okay with that, and I think that is far preferable to adjusting the numbers to make it go faster without telling that to the players and letting them think that they're succeeding where they're really not. I think by changing the numbers, you're cheating them out of an experience. You're cheating your players out of an experience. But if that is what everybody signs up for and the group is happy doing that, then there's no reason you shouldn't do it. There's no wrong way to play, but you do have to feel out your group and understand where they feel on this subject. And like I say, for me personally, it's a bad thing to me. But if other people are doing it and their group knows, I think the key is the group should know you're doing it. If you're adjusting numbers and not telling the group you're doing that, and they don't know that that's the plan, I think that's dishonest. If you tell them up front, hey, occasionally while we play, I may adjust numbers, and they all agree to that, then it's all good to go. But I think there's an inherent dishonesty if they don't know that you do that.
Hey Pink Phantom, Riley here. I just wanted to call in on the subject of fudging the dice. Firstly, obviously, everyone should play the way they want to, and being negative to someone about the way they choose to play is not on. Not to say that doesn't happen, it does, especially on Twitter. But I wonder how much of it is people failing to say, this is the way I like to play, maybe you should try it out. There were some similar reactions to some of the text in Muster, for example. Now, for me as a player and a GM, I don't want to fudge, so that's my bias. But some of your questions were really interesting, so I thought I'd chime in. Now, can you fudge other things than the dice? Yes, you totally can. The dice is not really the issue. Sure, that's something that comes up a lot, but having a GM PC come in and save the day if combat's going south is kind of the same thing. It's really about changing the situation or the outcome because the GM wants a different one. The quantum ogre, in this case, would be fudging. A lot of OSR systems and mechanics are really designed to guard against this. Random encounters, morale, are there to allow the GM to neutrally arbitrate things. Combat rules are there for that reason too. If there weren't rules for how many hit points you had, the GM would be constantly tempted to save the PCs from death, and it'd feel really bad for the players when the GM chose for them to die. I'm going into call number 2. On adventure modules, adventure paths being railroading, by their nature they are not, but you have to change them in response to player action to make them not railroads, right? What if the PCs decide to join bad guys? Well, the adventure module won't happen as written. Is constructing encounters and tables to achieve a certain effect fudging? I don't think so, and this is why. I don't want to fudge the dice because it feels like it takes agency away from the players. When I design an encounter, the players are yet to engage with it, so I can't know the outcome. Let's say I create a group of goblins in a room. Sure, I'll make sure their number and their tricks they have at their disposal will provide a fair challenge because it's fun. I don't want to make it too easy or too hard. But that's before the players have decided to engage with it. Sure, they could roll bad, they get surprised and then lose initiative, and we're looking at some PC deaths. And I could avoid that by saying they weren't surprised or the attack rolls missed. But would I do that if the PCs had developed a cunning plan and made the challenging encounter a cakewalk? No. Now, having said that, I'm not perfect. My game knowledge could be better, and I might create a situation that is or was never winnable for my players. And on to call 3. So, an encounter that was never winnable. Should you fudge then? Or for your example, if we're just wasting time on an encounter that really only has one outcome, where the PCs win, shouldn't we just skip ahead? There's a really good blog post about tiers of truth in game prep, which I think can apply here. It basically says when describing the world, you should aim for the highest level of truth, which would be what you wrote down in game prep. So in this case, the players walk into the room and my prep says there are 6 goblins, then that's how many there are. Let's say they kill the goblins though, and decide to search the bodies. Whoops, I didn't prep anything, so I pull out my handy loot the body table, and this is the second tier of truth, so procedure. And the final tier would be improv, and obviously you want to rely on the fiction, not just pull things up. Now, like fudging, this isn't the one true way to play, obviously, but it can be applied here. I make an encounter that's too easy, but it's a bit of a slog. Well, I might just hand wave it, but next time I want to create a procedure to handle that. A morale system for outmatched or a single roll combat mechanic. I might fudge to keep the players alive, but next time I'll have improved my encounter design. I'm still not a fan of that, but we could just have the PCs captured instead of being killed, if that makes sense in the fiction. Which is why the rules that assume death are not great. Anyway, talk to you later.
Hello, it's Barry here from A Song of Dice and Shadows. Just calling in respect to your Fudging the Dice episode. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you summed up that everybody does these things differently. We all have our different styles and we all play the game differently and run the game differently. And I think really that's okay. And it's not right to really come out and say there's a right way and a wrong way. And I think most of us do kind of accept that. There's people out there who like to, exclaim that there's a right and a wrong way, but most of us, I guess, don't really believe that. Yeah, I think the key thing is that I used to dice fudge, I think, a lot more back in the day. I don't so much now, but I wouldn't say it's because I feel a moral objection to it. I think it's more because I feel a pitch encounters obstacles at a better level now than I probably did. I guess another question is, as well as making things easier, what about people who add hit dice to creatures or hit points to creatures to make them last longer to fight? Because I'm aware that does happen sometimes. And again, that might make the fight last a bit longer, but maybe it's because they want it to be a bit more of an epic battle. And again, is that right? Is that wrong? I'd say, meh, it's up to the individual. And, if someone did it, I might be a little bit annoyed, but probably wouldn't be too massively put out. But I do know there's people out there who feel that it should be fair, and if people are messing around with stuff behind the screen, they're not playing fair one with the other, and they would get annoyed about the fact they've been allowed to win too easily, potentially. So yeah, it is one of those things. It's very much the individual, and probably one of those table conversations. Anyway, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Yo, Phantom. So just got done listening to your latest episode about fudging the dice, and yeah, that was a really interesting episode. You talked about a lot of stuff. So I want to start off by saying I agree with you that there is no one way to play. Every table's different. People can play however they want to play. That's totally cool. So I'm just talking from a personal perspective, which is what you were asking about for our thoughts. So here we go. For me, dice fudging is literally fudging the dice, fudging dice rolls, and specifically during gameplay. I don't consider it fudging the dice if you're rolling on a random chart and you pick something instead of rolling. I don't consider that to be fudging the dice, even though technically it is, because you get a result and you ignore it. I only consider fudging the dice to be during the game when you're rolling the dice and you roll a result, and to put it bluntly, you lie about the results. I don't like it because I wouldn't want my players doing that. So that's the thing, because I don't want my players doing it, I don't do it, because for me personally, I think it's cheating. I think it takes away from the game. The dice should be, for me, at my table, are a part of the game. They're almost like a player, They're they serve a purpose. They serve chaos. And so yeah, I don't fudge dice. I roll everything in the open. When we play on Roll20, I don't do whisper rolls or anything like that. When I play at the table, I roll in front of everybody. Now, partially that's because I have to, because my players need to read the dice. But I would do it anyway because I wouldn't want my players doing that too. And I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so if I don't want them doing it, I would feel like a total hypocrite if I then did it. So yeah, that's my thought on fudging dice. I don't think changing encounters is fudging dice. That's something different. It's in the same ballpark, but for me, that's something different. If you're taking away numbers of orcs from an encounter or something like that, I think that's different because you're not adjusting die rolls and then, fibbing about them, I don't mean to use the word lie because that's a very weighted word, but I mean, in a sense, that's what you're doing. If you roll a 3 and you say you rolled a 15 or vice versa, I mean, that's what you're doing. You're not telling the truth about what you rolled. And for me, that's the crux of it right there. It kind of gets to the heart of the game itself. It's like if you were playing Monopoly and you rolled whatever and you just counted wrong on purpose and landed on Broadway instead of some other crappy square. Like it cheats the game. For me, again, this is at my table. Anyone else who likes doing it, go for it, man. I hope you let your players know that you're doing it. But yeah, that's just me. My toaster just dang. Anyway, dude, I got a Swiss and ham melt on rye, all toasted up in the toaster oven. I'm going to go eat that. You have a great day. Take it easy. Peace out.
It seems like the consensus here is that dice fudging is about just that in the moment, rolling the dice, ignoring the dice because you don't like the results or you think the results are possibly unfair, or you're trying to avoid or move towards something. There's a goal in there that you're trying to work around. And I think that can fall into the category of railroading. It can fall into the category of the DM just trying to tell a story. It can fall into the category of not wanting to wipe a party early in an adventure. There's lots of reasons for it, but it's dice fudging, and I think the general consensus seems to be that it's not the correct thing to do. Unless, of course, it's been predetermined that under certain circumstances that will happen, but that needs to be worked out ahead of time and not something that the party, or the players rather, are surprised with over the course of play. With the notion being that it detracts from player agency if they're making choices and the consequences don't play out because the dice are being manipulated afterwards. Whereas something like adjusting the future puzzles or obstacles for the players based on what has happened in the past is maybe not as bad or not the same thing, because it's part of sort of the GM's role to provide challenges to the players without it being completely frustrating because they can never be overcome, or being far too easy and the players are just waltzing through and everybody's getting bored. I think that's a general summary of what I'm hearing. If I have misstated anybody's opinion, let me know. And thank you to everybody for calling in, because this was I didn't know what kind of responses I would get, both what type of responses I would get and how much in terms of interest of responding that I would get. And I thought it was very intelligent and respectful discussion by everyone aloud, stating their opinion strongly, but not being obnoxious about it, which is the opposite of what you see in social media a lot, which was very refreshing. So thank you all for that. And now, more from my solo AD&D RPG campaign, Tales of the Dragon Slayers. Day 114 since the Dragon's Rampage began. The ninth delve into the dungeon of the keep that they have adopted as their base of operations. Katja Rasputin, half-elf, first-level cleric, first-level fighter, fourth-level magic user. Bernie Keebler, elf, first-level fighter, first-level magic user, first-level thief. Sven Svenlig, first-level halfling fighter. Harl and Quinn, human, first-level rangers. With the entry level of the keep cleared, the party decides to go to the first upper level. Being nearer to the top of the hill, it should be smaller since that section of the hill is narrower, and since it's between the ground level and the level where they've made their personal quarters and their treasury, they want to make sure there are no secret entrances into that area that they haven't discovered yet. To an entry point near the southern end of the first level of the keep. Going upstairs, they immediately encounter on a wandering monster check a large group of bandits. But with a positive reaction roll, they are able to convince the bandits to peacefully leave the keep and have them escorted out by some of the soldiers that are trailing them. From the stairwell, they follow the corridor that goes east 30 feet and then north 30 feet into a large 60-foot by 40-foot chamber. This empty chamber has entryways to the north, east, and west. Choose to take the west hall. It goes 30 feet to a dead end with a door to the north. The door opens into an empty 30-foot by 20-foot room with another door on the east wall. That door opens onto a short 20-foot long hallway with an opening to the north, which leads into a large trapezoidal room. This room is 70 feet north to south, with the northern end being 30 feet wide and the southern end being 50 feet wide. And it has an opening to the north. This leads down a 30-foot hall, which turns to the west, with a secret door to the east. They spike the secret door closed and continue on to the west. After 30 feet, they have a choice to continue to the west or to go north or south. Continuing east, after another 30 feet, it opens into a 20 by 20 foot chamber. There appear to be no other exits initially, but they do find a secret door to the south, which they spike closed. They return to the crossway and go north 30 feet, where they encounter another cross hall to the west. Continuing on another 30 feet, the hallway ends with a stairwell to the east, going down. Seeing from their map that they don't know where this door leads down to on the entry level floor, they follow it down into a small 20 by 20 foot room, which has a group of gnomes in it. They send the gnomes with a group of their guards to be reunited with their fellows on another part of the ground floor where the other gnomes are lairing. And after the gnomes are gone under some loose stones, they find a huge chest with a potion, some copper, and a broom that detects as magical. Going back up the stairs, they go down the hall to the hallway, to the east hallway they had skipped. They follow it 30 feet, where it turns north-south, and it crosses a large stream. There's a bridge over the stream, and it leads to a one-way door back into the initial corridor they had taken to the cross hall. They would follow this back around to the cross hall and go south. About 50 feet down the hall, they come across 3 ogres coming through a door. Initiative is simultaneous. The ogres charge, and Katya casts web. The webbing does catch the ogres, but not before they are able to cover the distance and are webbed immediately in front of the party, striking at them with their glaive arms, but not able to get any hits as the webbing seems to hold them back. With the ogres held fast, the party is able to dispatch them and then burns the webbing to open the rest of the corridor. The ogres are carrying some gold, gems, and jewelry, as well as some large sums of silver and copper. The door the ogres have been coming through opens into a 20-foot by 30-foot room that is empty except for some metal urns. There the party discovers 2 pieces of jewelry and some darts that fire up at them but miss them. Doors to the south and to the west lead out of the room. Spiking shut the door to the west, they open the door to the south, where they find a 20-foot by 40-foot room with 2 doors in the east wall and 1 door in the south wall. Here they encounter a party of adventurers, lawful neutral, chaotic neutral, and chaotic evil group with a thief, 2 fighters, a cleric, as well as 5 men at arms. They have another positive reaction roll and have them escorted out of the keep. Hidden within the room, they find bags of silver and gold. Spiking the 2 doors to the east, they open the door to the south. This opens into a cave, roughly 50 feet by 30 feet, with a large opening to the west and a door to the east. They spike the door to the east and move through the western opening into a larger cave. They become very cautious, noting that the cave has high ceilings, and having encountered piercers in rooms in areas like this before. The larger cave also has very high ceilings and is roughly 90 feet by 80 feet. In the middle of the room is a large pool. Having had mixed results at their last pool they tried, they skirt the edge, and indeed they are set upon by piercers. They are surprised, and the piercers give a brief battle, but the party is able to escape with no injuries, and eventually they are able to track the piercers down and destroy them. Hidden among the craggy rocks where the piercers had attacked them, they find sacks with copper and gold. At the western end of the cave, they find another large opening, which turns north for 30 feet into a roughly hewn room, 30 feet by 30 feet. Rather, chamber, because there are no doors. There are exits to the south right beside where they came in, to the north, which is a more traditional hallway, and to the east, which is more cave-like exit. They take the other southern exit, which goes 30 feet before ending in a secret door, where they surprise, in a 20 by 20 foot room, a group of bullywugs. Having been surprised and frightened by the party's apparent prowess, the bullywugs surrender and are escorted out. Within the chamber, they find, in an iron trunk, some sort of wings and a map. Returning back to the 30 by 30 foot chamber, they take the exit north, where they discover a 40 by 40 foot chamber with an exit to the north and another exit to the south on the eastern side. They take the exit to the north, where it goes for 30 feet, then turns and goes east for 30 feet, ending in a door. The door opens into another chamber with an opening to the east, and they find a secret door to the north in the eastern corner. While they're searching, a group of gnomes comes in with their chief, and they have that group escorted to rejoin their brethren. Realizing that the secret door to the north is the one they had previously spiked in the 20 by 20 foot room off the cross corridor, they go east into a small 20 foot by 20 foot chamber with openings north and south. The northern opening leads directly into a 30 foot by 20 foot chamber, which is empty. The southern exit leads down 30 feet to a stairwell going down. Again, consulting their map, they realize that this leads to an area of the entry level that they previously had not visited and head down. Descending the stairs, they come into a 40 foot by 20 foot chamber with a 10 foot alcove to the east, and they encounter 3 skeletons, which Katya is able to turn. And while they are running away, the others are able to dispatch them easily. There is an exit to the south, and there is a door to the east in the alcove, which they realize must be a one-way door into a set of hallways they have already mapped, since there is no door on that map. So they take the southern exit 30 feet down a hall into a 50 foot by 30 foot chamber, which is empty, and the only exit is a door to the east, which they realize also must be a one-way door. Returning back upstairs, they wind their way back to the 20 foot by 40 foot room where they had spiked 2 doors to the east and unspike one of them and enter. This door opens into a 30 foot by 40 foot room, which they see contains both doors, and they realize that the back wall backs onto the room they first came into, the large room they came into after coming up the initial stairs. Here they encounter a large group of rats. The party is able to kill several before the others escape. And with time growing short in the day, they choose to return back to their quarters. So endeth the delve. The opening music of this podcast is Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thank you for listening to Phantom Thoughts. I would love to hear your feedback. You don't have to be part of the show. If you want to contact me and let me know, hey, these is for your eyes only. I just wanted to give you thoughts, ideas, response, and it's really for your eyes or ears only. That's absolutely fine. I'd love to hear from you either way. So just let me know when you contact me. Just, I don't want to be part of the show. There are lots of different ways you can contact me. You can send me an email at phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. And that can be a regular email, or you can attach an audio file to it. You can use the message button on my podcast site on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/phantom thoughts. You can contact me via my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. You can contact me via SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/phantom thoughts. You can contact me on Discord, The Pink Phantom. All this contact information is listed in the show notes of every episode. And thank you for those who call in. Thank you for those who don't call in. I appreciate you listening and hope you'll listen again next time. Until then, I hope you have a great day.